So one approach to image classification is unsupervised image classification. This simply uses a classification method. It looks for some sort of clustering of the pixels. It assigns categories or classes to those pixels, and then it puts those on the map display. So we might start out, once again, with 3 different bands of remote sensing imagery. Each one of those bands would be measured in a different portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. For example, this could represent red, this one green, and this one blue. And each one is going to have recorded how bright the red, green, and blue portion of the electromagnetic spectrum was. And then what we can do with these values is we can plot them in either 2D or 3D space. In this example, we're plotting 2 different bands against each other. We're looking for the minimum distance using the minimum distance algorithm, and we're coming up with these different categories. And these different categories, depending on all 3 of these bands, would then be assigned to a new raster layer, which would be the classified layer, where each pixel is assigned a value, in this case, of A, B, or C. And that's really what we're doing here. We're just finding how it maps out. So all of our C's are located in this area here, and it's just outlining the C area, the B area, and the A area. So here, we're not really giving any input to it. We're trusting that these classes will break out into different clusters, and we're just basically doing it in an unautomated fashion where we're not supervising, or we're not in charge of the algorithm. We're just letting it run and seeing what comes out of the other side. And of course, this is only going to be as good as how clustered the pixels are. Something like this seems like maybe we're unsure where the blue ends and the red begins here. But otherwise, we have dark blue breaks out very nicely, the greens break out nicely, and the red and blue are together here, but maybe there's a way that we can tell those apart. But in other cases, you can see here, maybe it's not quite as clear how these things would break out. So the clustering, if it is a good clustering, if we can break out different clusters of these pixels, that's probably the best time to use an unsupervised image classification. And this is the type of output that we'll get. So we can see on the left-hand side here, this is the original remote sensing image. And in this example here, we might be displaying 3 different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, assigning 1 to red, 1 to green, 1 to blue, probably in the same band in which they were measured from the electromagnetic spectrum, because the water looks dark and the forest looks green and the bare areas look a lighter green. So everything kind of seems to make sense color-wise. But it's an image, but if we clicked on any of these pixels here, it would not say this is water. And we want that to be the case. We want to say, if we click on a pixel, we want to know this is water, or this is forest, or this is agriculture or cultivation. So what we do is we do that sort of analysis, and we might come out with something like this. And in this, we see that instead of having 3 different bands, each with a brightness value varying from 1 to 255, we've assigned each of those to a class or a category, which is why we call classification. And so now the dark blue is water. So all of these pixels here would be assigned to water. If we clicked on one of those, it would say that it's water. We think we're able to break out the pine and the spruce. Those are 2 different types of forest, the mixed forest and the deciduous. And some of these, like cultivated lands, repeat themselves. Maybe we don't actually know what's growing on that land. And if we wanted to, we could combine those all into one category. And also something to remember is we don't always see the land itself, right? In this case here, we have 3 different categories that are clouds. These white things that we're seeing here, and in an area such as over here. And those are being assigned to the cloud category, and that would just indicate we're not able to see the ground.